Hi everyone, welcome to the PEB channel. I'm Joel Pettit, and today I want to talk to you about the DoD and the VA and how they differ in applying the VA system for rating disabilities, or the VASRD. You can find the VASRD in 38 CFR Part 4. I'm not going to talk too much about the VASRD because that's not where the rubber meets the road. And I want you to understand better how these different interpretations can affect your case. So let's just jump right in to a real-world example that I see very often and I have for years. Diabetes at the 60% level. You can find the diabetes code in the CFR at 38 CFR section 4.119 or in the VASRD as published by the VA in section 7913. So let's talk about what the 60% disability rating requires. Daily insulin injections, restricted diet, regulated activities, episodes of ketoacidosis or hypoglycemic reactions that necessitate 1 to 2 hospital visits per year, or 2 visits to your endocrinologist every month, plus complaints that if they were evaluated separately would be non-compensable. I know it's very complex, so let's just talk about the hospital visits. I know, it sounds like I'm making it too easy. I'm not, because this is where the difference in how the two agencies apply the VASRD and interpret it, it really pops out. So let's just say you submit for a claim for diabetes. What's that rater going to look at? Of course, they're going to look at all your medical documents, but they're also going to look at the data that's coming from your insulin pump. Of course, that data will pretty much be able to verify much of what's in your medical records. Here's the kicker. Let's say you do suffer episodes of ketoacidosis, but you don't go to the hospital. Does that mean you automatically don't get that 60% rating? No. Many times the VA raters will look at that data. They'll notice there are 1, maybe 2 times in a year that you should have gone to the hospital, but you didn't. What they typically do is still award you the 60%, so long as you hit the other wickets, because I would argue they're taking into consideration that you yourself are not an endocrinologist. You may not really understand that when you feel a certain way when you're slipping into ketoacidosis, that you should be going to the hospital. Instead, luckily, you've somehow eaten something, drank something, you have something that gets you back to stasis and allows you to continue living and not slip into a diabetic coma. That's great. But they're taking that into consideration when they're thinking of the severity and how that might affect your diminution of earning potential. So that data, if you will, is making up for the fact that you yourself maybe didn't really understand when you should have gone to the hospital. There are a lot of assumptions in that approach. Well, let's talk about the DoD side. Let's say you're in a hearing for IDES, meaning the Legacy Disability Evaluation System, and the medical officer, they make sure you hit the first 3 wickets, and then they start talking about you going to the doctor twice a month, and you don't. Okay. They may ask you whether or not you've gone to the hospital in the last year for your diabetes. If you say no, what I've seen 100% of the time is they've said you don't get the 60%. Some would say that's harsh. I'm not so sure about that. What I would argue is that it's a very direct approach to using the rule. It's more of a cautious approach. Why? Because there's no assumptions in that approach. Clearly, what they're doing is saying, okay, the code requires that you basically provide us with medical documentation that you've seen your doctor this many times a month for your diabetes, or you show us, if not 1, 2 admittance packages, if you will, for the hospital for your ketoacidosis or hypoglycemic reactions, and then you should have discharge paperwork for the same. You don't have them, then you don't get the 60. You see how it's somewhat blunt, but it ensures that there is no error on their side, meaning there's no adjudicators that are assuming too much about a person. Others would say, well, people are, they're not perfect. They're not doctors. There's this thing called human frailty, which is we all have these imperfections, and the data from your insulin pump, that makes up for that. So what's the issue? The issue is avoidance of litigation. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. It's being very, very cautious with their interpretation, because what can they prove? You didn't have the evidence. What else can they prove? That's the rule. It's that simple. I'm not saying one is better than the other. And I'm not saying one's fairer than the other, because you can see the VA's way of doing things can easily go wrong, but so can the DoD's. They're just applying their methodologies a little differently. They have different interpretations. So that's why when people ask me what they should do when they're in these scenarios, I tell them you need to speak to your attorney. You need to speak to your government or private attorney, because although anyone who's literate can read the rule, understanding how that rule is going to be interpreted, how it's going to be applied to the facts of your case, and then understanding also that the VA and the DoD, they are legally bound by the interpretation by the Supreme Court, the Federal Circuit, and also the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. So understanding that case law and that precedent, and understanding how that all combines with your facts, and also the stage of the case that you're in, meaning in the IDES, there's a lot of things in motion. So if you're a service member and you're going through this, please go to my website, joelpettitlaw.com, send me an email, give me a call. I'd love to speak to you about your potential case. If this video has helped, please click here to watch more. But thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.